Welcome. I'm J. Michael Silver, and this is Foundational Steps, the show. I talk with people about the choices they make in life and how they get where they are now. In this episode, I'm talking with Gabriel Andreson, co-founder of Inovis Energy, Inc. We talk about how he doubled his income overnight, hiring practices, and of course, solving the world's problems, which we did. Links to Gabriel can be found in the show notes, along with timestamps for all the things that came up while we talked. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell. Leave a comment or a review. Tell me what you're thinking. To go deeper or ask questions, find us on patreon.com/foundational steps and all social media platforms. Enjoy our conversation. So I just welcome you to the show. We'll just make this as casual as possible.
Sure.
Because this is our first time meeting, I feel like, we'll just kind of work into it all. So you started to tell me a story about a guy that you're interviewing. This is for a job, correct?
Yes.
And he found you on LinkedIn. So he sought you out and said, I want to work for Gabriel. I want to work for this guy. I want to work for Gabe. And he's the guy that I want to work under.
Yeah, I think we both came to the interview with a open mind. I don't think before the interview that he necessarily wanted to work for me. But I think sort of on our journey together through our lunch today, we both had salads. By the end of the interview, he sent me his resume here, and he wants to have a second interview. But the point is I met him through LinkedIn. And what I do is a weekly post around business, but it's really from a different perspective.
Okay.
It's sort of business things that I've learned over the years on the interpersonal part of business.
Mm-hmm.
So much in business, we get focused on money. Money's great, or it can be great. What it can do for you. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, business is about people.
Yeah.
And that's the value system that my business partner and I both share is, this is about people, and we really care about people. Consequently, I'm a man of faith. My business partner is not, but we sort of understand each other and have this shared value system that it's about people. So I said, do you know why I do these weekly posts on business that are just a little different? And he said, that's a really good question. I don't. Why do you do posts the way that you do posts? And I said, because I get a tremendous amount of fulfillment in giving back.
Mm-hmm.
And this is my small offering. And now it's got legs of its own. And I really am feeling even more empowered that I've learned a tremendous amount of stuff over the years that I've been in business.
Mm-hmm. That's fantastic. So there's so many things there I'm curious about, because your business partner, not being a man of faith, I would argue that he is a man of faith, just perhaps not of a spiritual faith or a religious faith.
Sure.
I've written about this many times. I've not published any of it yet. At some point in time, I'll probably put a blog out. But faith to me is the ability to get in the car and, drive to the store and know that your car is going to get you there. Because you have no idea. You really don't know, but you just assume it's going to work. That's faith. In the most simple, basic, way. It's the thing that allows us to, get up in the morning. It's the unknown and just accepting that it's all going to work out to some degree. And then I think faith expands from there, depending on your experience, your background, religion, culture, everything else. So the guy that we started this conversation with, who found you on LinkedIn, you said you don't think he initially wanted to work for you, but through the conversation. So did he just reach out to you because he was enthralled with what you had to say in your message?
I think he reached out to me because he's interested in the clean tech space.
Mm-hmm.
And specifically, he saw a video I had done on electric vehicles. And that really piqued his interest. And I think his first message to me was, "Hey, Gabe, I saw your video. I'd really like to sit down with you and pick your brain on EV technology."
Yeah.
And that's how, I honestly didn't really think I was going to a job interview until 2 days ago.
And so what changed in the 2 days? Because, part of what's interesting to me is, I mean, I grew up, my father was a headhunter. So, he placed people, lawyers, doctors, engineers, mathematicians, in the DC metro area. And so I grew up, in a staffing, with a staffing background, staffing industry. Both my parents ran the company. My sister ran one of the offices. I worked for them on and off. So, I mean, and nowadays with everything being digital, yes, we have more access, but getting jobs and finding where, you want to work, most people see that as like, there's gatekeepers, there's, these apps, Indeed and ZipRecruiter and so forth. So what made it shift? I mean, obviously it was just a nice conversation of some sort that started on LinkedIn. What shifted that made you think that it was a job interview, and why did you go through with it at that point in time?
Well, number one, I saw across my LinkedIn feed came a post that he put up that he's looking forward to getting back to work.
Mm.
So that was a pretty clear indicator that he was interested in talking to me about employment. The second piece of that is we're starving for good people.
Yeah. Do you think everyone is starving for good people though? And do you think, I mean, this is obviously just your opinion, but do you think it's not that other people aren't good, but they don't know perhaps how to show themselves as good candidates, or how to be good candidates? Not that they don't have the potential, but perhaps they just don't have the training or understanding of how to do it.
I think you're correct. I'm coaching my daughter right now in her career, and she's getting ready to interview, I think at a couple different places, and she's a beast, but she doesn't really know it.
Yeah.
So she's learning. It's good.
How old is she?
23, 22, 23.
Okay. So that's, I mean, that's a kind of a critical age right there. So she's out of college, or did she not go to college?
She is going to be finished in May. She's
Nice.
doing her degree online, and she's a
Okay.
real estate agent in Boston.
Oh, wow.
And she's doing really well. And like I'm driven. She's like, my ceiling is her floor. We'll say that.
I get that. I totally get that. I mean, I have nephews, they're a lot younger, 15 and 12, but I can see in them a drive that it's very interesting, because I didn't see it nearly as much or I don't remember seeing it, or remember being aware of it in my peers. I had a drive, but it was very hyper focused and singular, and everything grew out of that. That's interesting. So as a real estate agent, does she not want to continue doing that, or is she interviewing with other agencies?
So what's happening is she has been in the apartment rental business
Okay.
as a real estate agent, which requires a license. So she has her license,
Mm-hmm.
and she's now been dipping her toe in actually selling, properties. She loves it. She's really good at it. She's not getting a lot of support on the actual real estate transaction side.
Okay.
And so with her current company, she's basically kind of close to the top of where she can get without having the support she needs to actually take it next level and start selling houses and condominiums and so forth and so on.
Gotcha. Yeah. I mean, she'll figure it out. And with you as a coach, I mean, I know enough about your background to know that you've been through the ringer a few times. I mean, what's the old saying? Standing on the better stand on the shoulders of giants.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, it's king. I mean, that's, again, kind of goes back to why I'm doing this, It's interesting, just to return to the gentleman that found you on LinkedIn. So at that point in time, you figured he's looking for a job. Did he know he was looking for a job from you? Or was he just genuine? Or do you think he was just genuinely interested in EV and that's where it ended?
I don't know.
Uh,
I don't know. I'll let you know in about 6 months.
yeah, fair enough. I find it fascinating. I mean, there has to be a little bit of gamesmanship, when you're, looking for a job, especially, is this a sales position?
Yeah.
Yeah, especially for a sales position, because you got to be creative. Like you might, as a salesman myself, I might have the best product for someone. I might be able to change their life for the better. They still don't want to talk to me until they want to talk to me. But they're not going to know that they want to talk to me until after I figured out how to make them talk to me, and not piss them off in the process. So hopefully this guy works out. Hopefully it goes well. I will be curious to get an update on that in 6 months from now.
100%.
It's such a fascinating thing. I've coached friends on job interviews. I've coached friends and people that hired me to, help them figure out where they're going with their career or get their career to the next spot. And there's, are you familiar with Tim Ferriss?
Yeah.
So I love his podcast and his books. And a podcast recently I was listening to of his, he said, if you can't measure it, then you can't grow it. And I think that's, true. And interviewing is sales. Like, I don't care what your job the individual is going after. It's sales. You're selling yourself. And I think salespeople know that. And I think for whatever reason, the rest of the world just didn't get the memo. And I feel like that's where, where we're lacking, we're a capitalistic culture, and that's being exported to every country around the world. And no one's bothering to say, by the way, you're a product, whether you like it or not, you always have been. The oldest profession on earth is not prostitution. It's actually storytelling. And the first use of storytelling was sales to get you to like me so that we could possibly work together or mate or, whatever. And then it went, down the line from there. So, when you have someone working for you, do you look for those things, or when you're hiring, like what's the thing that you look for in finding someone and figuring out whether it's going to work or not?
It's a really interesting question because, like snowflakes, people are all incredibly different and people are all incredibly unique. And so for a sales position, I wouldn't necessarily look for the same qualities as I would in somebody that we would need for project management, or even for marketing outreach. It's all different. If there's one major quality that both my business partner and I chase, it's people that are independently motivated. They're self-motivated. They show up looking to get a job done, not looking to just go to work.
So that's interesting. And I get it. And I think, anyone listening probably gets it. But you're posting, you called it inspirational videos. The way you want to give back.
Yeah,
maybe
something like
I've
that.
I've seen a couple of them. So I don't know if I have the big picture. Is the goal with that to help people find themselves or find their self-starter?
Yeah. Yes. But it's not like that. super targeted. It's more like, okay, here's something for you to contemplate.
Mm-hmm.
Where can, like one of my recent posts, I recounted 15 years ago when I was in the middle of a divorce and I was absolutely torn. And I went to work one day. Ironically, the office I worked at was about 2 miles from where I am now.
Mm-hmm.
And I was having a shit day. It was a day from hell, and totally emotional, despair, hopelessness, all of the above was on me that day. And one of my fellow employees said, "Hey, Gabe, do you want to go outside for a minute and sit at the picnic table?" And I was like, you know what? I do. And in the context of work, we went out and sat at the picnic table and I cried and just told him the things that I was feeling that day. And he didn't try and fix me. He literally just listened to me. And there was a tremendous amount of validation and healing in that moment. Not that my problems went away, but I felt listened to. And when I wrote that article, I had actually had that memory like a couple weeks before then. And I said, who do you have at your job that's having a bad day that you can go listen to and pay it forward? That's the kind of stuff that I write about.
That's awesome. I mean, I do feel like that is, you're giving a task, for, take this challenge. I mean, to kind of escalate it a little bit, it's like, people have the 30-day challenges or whatever. It sounds like you're just giving them a simple challenge. Go and look around you and see, who you might be able to offer support in some way. And sometimes being seen, I think, is the most amazing, or seeing someone for what they're going through is possibly the most amazing thing that they can experience, or at least in that moment of need.
In that moment, 100%.
So do you just come up with tasks and then you say, okay, this is something I've got to post, or do you make notes?
It's really interesting. I make mental notes.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody has ever asked me this. Where do you come up with your content? It comes from daily life. And I'll have an inspirational thought. Sometimes it'll be as I'm going to bed, and I'll send myself a text message so I don't forget it, because the older you get, the more you kind of stuff passes through.
Yeah.
Other times it'll be something extraordinarily powerful that I can just make a mental note of, and I'll write an article on it. I find, I like music. I'm not a very good singer, but sometimes I relegate my writing to artwork.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like I'm getting very creative. And
Now, did you ever consider yourself an artist at any point in time in your life?
I play electric guitar. I've played drums. That's about it as far as arts.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's very creative though. In my opinion, as an artist, I've studied multiple instruments, voice, acting, sculpting, woodworking. Like, I want to try anything and everything. So from my perspective, it's part of the human condition, and it's something that naturally comes out, and culturally we tend to suppress it. We cut funding, from schools. We don't encourage it. We say it's frivolous, it's extra, wait until you're wealthy, pick up a hobby, but right now you've got to learn a skill, kind of thing. But to me, it's everything. You can't live without the ability to express yourself. And the more self-expression that we can foster in ourselves and in other people, just better we're all going to be. I mean, that's just my personal opinion. Do you see yourself now with this writing? Do you see that as a creative outlet as well?
100%.
So I mean, obviously I know you're reaching people and you want to give back, but are you finding, is this is something I've been thinking a lot about as I've been, developing and creating the show and, wanting to build a community around this. Giving back, being of service, I think is kind of the highest ideal. So I always thought being an actor would give me the greatest ability to serve because I'm giving people a break from their life, or I'm planting seeds of, look at this story of triumph. Look what these people got through, went through. You can do it too. The common man, the everyman, that was always kind of what I had in my mind and what I thought would, best way to give to people. My action career didn't go quite the way I expected. And so the show is born in a lot of ways to, figure out different ways of giving people, new ways of looking at things. So in your exploration now that you're in a place where you get to relax a little bit, you're still playing music and you're writing more, like how much of your life, like percentage wise, is starting to be dedicated to that pursuit?
More of it. So I really enjoy public speaking.
Mm-hmm.
My business partner knows that, ultimately at some point I'd like to transition into doing that more.
Yeah, I was wondering about that.
Yeah, I have a goal for myself for 2022 that actually I said it last night, that I would speak at least 6 times this year. So once every other month. As we've mentioned, I'm a man of faith. There's a little bit of a stage for me.
Yeah.
But I really have this ideal, that I have something to say, and it's really helpful.
Yeah. No, after reading your story, and we'll maybe dive into a little bit of that in a minute, because I think it's apropos of what you're telling me now. I'm curious though, would this be qualified as one of your 6 times?
That's a very interesting question. I hadn't thought that. If I get to 5, then yes.
That's funny. So, but you're thinking you need it to be live in front of people.
Yes, but isn't that rigid? So I'm not a rigid person. I could call this number 1.
I mean, just a thought.
Yeah.
I mean, part of my asking that is a little bit selfish because I feel like, oh, I'm giving you a platform to do one of your 6. So part of it's a little selfish, I'll admit that. But also part of it is just to get where your head's at, because in the story that you told me of how you got to where you're at now prior to this conversation, it seemed like there were a lot of blinders on,
100%.
and many times where people might have even been trying to tell you, hey, you're amazing, and instead of going and doing something more with that or challenging yourself, you just kind of kept doing what you were doing, and continued to be amazing in that lane. And so that's also where my head goes when I see there's a story of Jean-Claude Van Damme is with a director that he's talking to. This would have been back in like the 80s, and he sees Arnold Schwarzenegger. This is at the heyday of all of their films, and they're at like a restaurant or something like that. And Jean-Claude brings this director up to Schwarzenegger and he's like, you've got to meet this guy. He's going to be, one day he's going to be the most amazing director. And Schwarzenegger just looks at him and says, why not every day? And then like, it's one of those things that just reverberated in my head for probably the last 20 years since I first heard it when I moved out to LA. And it's such a simple thing. The idea of being great one day because you're aspiring to something versus, no, I'm already great. I just have to figure out how to show the world, or I've you know what I mean? And does that resonate?
Absolutely. I'll perhaps repeat back to you what you're saying using different words.
Please.
We limit ourselves by our thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And all of us have been given power, and it's power to change and
Mm-hmm.
power to affect and power to make wealth. And I wish that I had had a mentor,
Yeah.
because I feel like I'd have been so much farther along, although most often we learn through failure.
True.
Pain gets us to pay attention. And I'd like to share a story that was a breakthrough moment for me that I think maybe would be beneficial to some audience.
Yeah, please.
When I was 26 or 27, I had started in the lighting business, literally selling light bulbs door to door, not house to house, business to business.
Mm-hmm.
And the company that had hired me, they paid me, I think it was $17,000 a year for 3 years in a row. And I couldn't really see getting anywhere economically ahead. However, I had a real passion about lighting. I loved it. My first wife at the time was pregnant with our first child. And
This is the daughter that's real estate.
yeah,
Gotcha.
Abigail. And I was terrified because they closed the doors on the business. So here I am, wife is about to have a baby, and I've got no income. So I won't go really deep into the story, but I'll just tell you this. I ended up at this lighting company that I had found a flyer on. And I had an hour gap between appointments and happened to be near their office. I walked into their office. Unbeknownst to me, there had been an exodus of salespeople from that company within the 2 months prior or so. And so right place, right time. I interviewed with the operations guy, and he, basically his jaw hit the floor. He couldn't believe that this kid comes walking in off the street that knows a lot about lighting and is looking for a sales job. He immediately took me into the owner's office, and we had a jousting session, literally talking about the lights that were in the ceiling.
Nice.
It was my interview.
Yeah.
But here's the key. At that moment, he said to me, "Okay, Gabe, how much money are you making?" And wisdom kicked in. And I realized in that split second that I had the opportunity to propel my income. And I didn't answer his question directly. He said, "How much money are you making?" I said, "Well, I really need to be making about $50,000 a year plus commissions." He did not bat an eyelash. He did not bat an eyelash. And I said, "And I want a base of accounts that I can work, that I don't have to go and bring in,
Right.
but that are already a base of customers. I will service them, and I will bring in more sales from those customers by taking care of them."
Mm-hmm.
And I had a job offer 3 days later.
That's awesome.
I more than doubled my income overnight, and I got the health insurance, and I give credit to somebody else. It all came together. That was my first real iteration of understanding that we hold cards that are very powerful cards, and it's not always best to just put them all out on the table.
Right. 100%. Now, you'd worked for 3 years, you said, at that job?
3 years in the industry, yes.
And then you got that interview. You walked in the
Yes.
door and boom, you're meeting the guy. I mean, do you think, because you didn't have a mentor,
No.
so do you think you could have had that conversation earlier than 3 years, or before your daughter was conceived, or like at what point in time do you think you were ready for that conversation to happen, where you more than doubled your income?
So I'm going to be completely honest with you. Necessity propelled the conversation.
Yeah.
I wasn't ready for that conversation. I needed it.
I think that's awesome. So much of life, so much we can't really prepare for anything. My fiance and I are talking about having kids. It's not we're not sure that we can have kids. We've not tried, so it's in the future. But both of us have expressed, I think both of us will be amazing parents, but I think we've also both have our fears and so forth around that. And it's one of those things where, from my perspective, given my life experience and everything else, I don't think there's any possible way we're ever going to be prepared for it. We can just be the best people we are, love as much as possible, and be open to learning what we need to learn. And I feel like that's probably the best example, especially for people who have kids that are maybe looking for a job or trying to figure their life out. It's like, were you ready to have kids? Probably not. But you did it. So are you ready for this new adventure where you're going to learn something new? Probably not, but you're going to figure it out and you're going to get there. Correct. And I feel like, it's so difficult to find the words to get through so people will hear you. Which is, why there's so many amazing, Tony Robbins. I'm not a fan of his for a lot of reasons that we don't need to get into right now, but he's built a business and really propelled the industry of motivational speaking by doing nothing more than making you feel like you can do something. And then there's another industry of people, coaches and so forth, that pick up the pieces and when people fail, and to actually help propel them. So it's kind of I guess a love-hate relationship with him, because I love that he has such a natural gift to motivate, but I want more actionable steps. I want more, hard rigor involved in what he does. And so sure. I'm really thankful for all of the business coaches and life coaches and that have spawned out of the motivational, because the motivational speakers oftentimes, in my opinion, lead people to a cliff, get them to jump, and then don't give them the resources to build a parachute to make it safely to the ground in many cases. I don't know, before I say anything else or change the subject, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, okay, I have a tremendous amount of respect for Tony Robbins. There was a guy that came to my high school. I mean, now we're talking many years ago. I graduated in 1990. His name, I can't even believe that I remember his name. His name was Mark Scherenbrock.
Nice.
And he was a motivational speaker, public high school, not faith-based. And he really impacted me to the point where maybe I'll go speak at public schools someday.
Yeah.
Now, to your point, motivational speaking generally cracks the door open, but coaching delivers the work.
Yeah.
And it takes work to affect change from all of our broken patterns. Takes a tremendous amount of work.
And most of it, if not all of it, unfortunately, can't be done by anyone other than us. Correct. Or the person being coached.
Correct.
I think that's where we talked earlier about we learn through pain, we learn through struggle or necessity. So I guess, and I've seen it work. I know it's possible. But how do you feel about, instead of waiting till someone has a kid or two kids or three kids and they're in financial dire straits, and then showing them the path, instead of that, like, I feel like there is a way to talk to people at a very early age, or for parents to talk to their children and give stories, give examples, or create that in their own home, or through podcasts, or through, movies or whatever. But I feel like that's something really worth focusing on, is finding how to have that pain, finding how to, go through the gauntlet before you're forced in. Like how to bring people willingly to run the gauntlet, and then only to find out, oh, I did pretty good, and there's a scene in the Matrix. Have you seen the original Matrix, the first
Oh
Matrix?
yeah, the first one was the best one.
Yeah. So Morpheus takes Neo to the rooftop, and just free your mind. He jumps across, and Neo's just sitting there, all right, free your mind. And everyone's in the Nebuchadnezzar, and they're sitting there, and they're just like, is he going to make it? Well, what happens if you make it? No one makes it their first go. And they're having that dialogue. That moment, it's like, if your life didn't depend on making a sale, and you were just going out there and saying, hey, let's see if you can do this, then it still may be anxiety ridden and nerve wracking, because you're in front of everyone, or you're being challenged by your peers or your elders, but the stakes are a lot lower. It's a lot easier to get someone into that situation.
Yeah, so I don't know exactly how to touch that, but I have this thought. I was terrified of having children, which it's a tremendous responsibility. And in some sense, you can't do it. Okay. But that's where the growth happens.
Right.
As far as parenting, something that I did, I think, pretty well. There were three things that I wanted to impart to my kids. And obviously the first one is that God loves them. Okay. The second one is that they would know that their dad absolutely loves them. I'm crazy about my kids. The third, almost as equally important as the first two, is a good work ethic. And so what I did with them, after listening to some Dave Ramsey, was I decided I'm never going to pay them an allowance. And what I did instead of an allowance was, they would say, Dad, can we have money? I said, yeah, if you do that, and do that, and I'll give you money.
Yeah. Sounds familiar.
Okay. Over the years, that affected them in such a way that both of my kids have a tremendous work ethic. And we're seeing it in my oldest, and my youngest is a beast in school, and she's working.
How old's your youngest now?
She's 20.
20. Okay. So 20 and 23.
20 and 22.
22. Okay.
20 and 22. I made, that was my mistake. But both of them are tremendous workers, and they don't have entitlement. And I think that equips them for life.
Yeah.
I had an interesting conversation with my dad, who I love dearly and is a tremendous source of wisdom. There was some kind of a financial debacle that one of my daughters was in, and she came and asked me for money, and it's like, Dad, what do you think about this? And he just said, Gabe, you have to ride the line between supporting them and always being the fail safe, because they'll never learn some of the lessons that they need to learn if you're always stepping in and bailing them out.
Yeah.
I thought that was really valuable lesson.
Well, I think so. I had arguments with my father because there were some things that, I worked for the company from the time I was, I don't know, 5-6 years old, stuffing envelopes, and I'd get, I don't know, 5 cents an envelope or something like that.
Oh,
So,
I love it.
you
Love it.
know, I was making money that early. And, my dad needed a new lawnmower. And so he said, why don't you start a lawn mowing business? You can go and get some yards and, I'll help you. I'll help you finance the lawnmower. And I was like, oh, okay, great idea. So I got a handful of customers. He bought the lawnmower and then I paid him back, on I don't think he charged me interest. He might have, but, so it was a valuable lesson, 14, 15 years old. I must have been 13 or 14 doing the lawn, because when I was 15, I started lifeguarding and being the assistant coach, swim coach. But you're right. It's incredibly valuable, and the work ethic you get from it. And it was amazing. My dad got a new lawnmower. Of course, I always mowed the lawn, which I later realized that I needed to negotiate a certain rate for that. Because I was like, wait a second here. I bought the lawnmower and I'm doing the lawn for free. That doesn't make any sense.
See, so there was a lesson for you to
Yeah.
arrive at.
But there's other areas in my life. It was interesting where he had a much more difficult hands off, or being hands off. And most of our fighting was we either fought because I just didn't think he understood or saw me and he just didn't get it, or we fought, because he's like, well, if you believe me, let me do this. And he's like, well, I don't want you to screw up. Well, if I screw up, I screw up, and we literally from high school on had those conversations. And I had to, we had a difficult relationship at times because of it. We ended up starting a couple of businesses together. Not sure I recommend that. you any issues you have with your parents will come out tenfold if you're doing a business together, is what I found, my experience. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting. My mom, I'm curious what you did with your kids. My mom would say, she wouldn't say, pick up your toys. She would say, if you'd like, I will help you pick up your toys. Do you want my help? Yeah. So then it was my job to pick up my toys, and I was getting her to help me. Is that something that resonates with your experience?
I was more like, pick those up and I'll pay you money.
Okay. So
vacuum that carpet and I'm going to pay you money.
So it was a direct, that's great.
It was totally direct. And listen, there are parts of brokenness in me, just like everybody else. I'm just being honest. This is how I did it.
All of us. I mean, but that's the thing. I don't think there's a right or wrong. I don't, like I said, I don't have kids yet. But I've worked with kids, and I started coaching young kids at an early age and teaching them how to swim. And then I've been doing martial arts my entire life. So I started training kids how to do martial arts. I decided I wanted to become a dancer in college. So after a couple of years of doing that, I started teaching people how to dance. Best way to, learn something at a higher level is teach it. And I just kind of kept on going from there. Lost my train of thought.
Directly paying my kids money.
Because I worked with kids in so many different capacities throughout the years, the one thing that I came to the conclusion is every parent is going to screw their kids up, whether they like it or not. There's no way around it. And it may not be direct, it may be indirect. It may not be because you're a bad person. You may be the most giving, caring, wonderful person on the earth, but whatever that child, that person, that individual, that soul is here to do with their life and what their gifts are, it's going to, they're going to choose what they, push against and what they have resistance to. And you might be doing the right things for someone else, but it's going to cause resistance in them, and it's going to push them over here, and it's going to give them baggage. No way around it. Or they're going to, the kid's going to go off and hear something at school, and they're going to think, oh yeah, I need to do that. And it's so the wrong thing. But they don't know it. And they heard it. They don't even necessarily remember where they got it from, but now it's in them. It's like a worm in their brain, and they're just attached to this idea that they've got to go and do this to be popular or liked or a good student or whatever. And now they're killing themselves for no good reason. Are you familiar with mindfulness?
Oh yeah.
So
are you familiar with anxiety?
Well, but see, this is modern. This is so new now. Like, I started mindfulness when I was a child, practices inadvertently. And when I used to teach meditation when I was in my early 20s, and try to distinguish the difference between meditation, mindfulness, and breathing exercises. 20 years ago, people had no idea what I was talking about. And I was, unless I was in a certain type of group, and I had to spoon feed it and really, really go slow so that people could feel it, experience it for themselves. And now everywhere you look, there's a new meditation app, there's a new mindfulness app, there's a new breathing app. So from my perspective, it's still, I'm still kind of surprised. Like, do you know? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you use any of those meditation apps?
I have Insight Timer on my phone. I haven't used it in a while. Where I go is I focus on my breathing.
Mm-hmm.
And I find that helps to center me.
Yeah, it's very powerful.
Yeah.
The idea of body, mind, and spirit. So breathing is body, obviously. Mind is mindfulness, and spirit is meditation. So that's the best. That's the best way I've always found to explain it to people. And anxiety, breathing is more often than not going to be the easiest way to deal with anxiety, because it's usually a physical sensation depending on. Sometimes there's spiritual anxiety and sometimes there's mental anxiety. It just depends. But that's amazing. So did you figure that out for yourself, or did you have to read a book, or how did that come about?
I actually dove into meditation reading a book by a guy named Thomas Merton.
Okay.
Thomas Merton was a Catholic priest that really got into meditation.
Oh, wow.
And his book is, oh my goodness, I think it's called The Palace of Nowhere or something like that.
That sounds vaguely familiar.
But the reason that I went to that book is because I was having panic attacks. And I had to do something, because I tried traditional medications and they put me into fog land.
Mm.
So I had a time in my life where I did meditation as a regular practice. I would call it contemplation. I've had a few meditative experiences where my awareness opened to the presence of God in a way that it never had before. Suddenly I'm aware of the eternal, like here it is. Like,
that's pretty special.
Whoa.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome.
And you can't just replicate it. It has to sort of just happen.
There's I'm forgetting his name. It might be Trumpin Rinpoche. I'm forgetting who said this, but basically, one of my favorite podcasts is Duncan Trussell, and he does a lot of meditation and a lot of different training and works with a lot of different gurus and so forth. And one of his teachers told him, let it go, like that experience of otherworldliness or whatever, don't chase that. Right. That's the same as, chasing drinking alcohol or drugs or whatever. If you're chasing the high, then you're no longer doing the thing. And I find that to be very true. Like I know what you're talking about, that experience. And like anytime I want that experience, I'm not going to get it.
Right.
But also what happens is, it's an interesting thing for me, because I've been doing some, meditation and breathing and everything my entire life. For me, and now that you've been doing it for years, I'm curious for you. But for me, if I have that, like, why am I not feeling anything? That's my, one of my mindfulness triggers to go, oh, I need to find out what's going on here. And so that's when it's time to do a mindfulness exercise, to check in with my everything, my being, to find out what's off, or where the biofeedback is coming from, or where the mental feedback. Oh, that's interesting. I'm having that story run in my head that I'm feeling I need to be connected. That means I'm feeling disconnected. So what else is going on? And then just accepting, non-judgmentally accepting what's going on. And then I can figure out what steps I need to take to, get back to feeling connected and loved and
Sure.
happy and all that.
Yep.
Do you have a similar process? Or
So I had probably 2 years where I was practicing meditation, contemplation regularly. Now, what I do now in terms of my routine is I grab my coffee in the morning. I'll typically read 1 or 2 chapters of the Bible. Then I will journal in 2 different journals. One of my journals is specifically journaling my frustrations, things that I'm really upset about, or mildly upset about, or sometimes there's not much to write at all. And then I'll write into what I call my wins journal, where I basically just go over the things that I accomplished the day before.
Nice.
And there might be, in closing, there might be some gratitude, where I'll write, like a prayer. I'll write, hey, yeah, I'm just really thankful for this, this, and this. Then I go for a walk in my neighborhood, which ultimately it's about a 2-mile walk. During that walk, I'll do some practice of silence. And during that silence, in my mind, I'm engaging in that silence. And I'm looking for different things that I'm considering down deep. And I get a lot of inspiration during my walks as well. So
that's nice.
Yeah.
The silence and the quieting of the mind is something that I feel it's a great thing to aspire to, but I feel like it might be talked about too much for someone coming to it. Like
it can be intimidating.
Yeah, because if you sit alone and you try to close yourself off, and you're new to, meditation, or, wanting to, get deeper in yourself, then it starts getting really noisy. And I feel like, it's one of those things that I've been playing with an outline for a book on, just the kind of foundations of mindfulness, breathing, and meditation. It's one of the things that I want to put out, through my channel, because it's one of those things that I always want to yell out to people. It's like, you can meditate, and if you think 1 minute is meditation, that's great. Do 1 minute, and then find out if maybe you want to do 2, or a minute 30, or whatever.
So here's let me comment on this. By the way, I think you should write the book, because if you've been doing it since you were born, basically since you were a kid.
And just to be clear, I've had lots of, because I have anxiety, I have I'm OCD, I have all kinds of learning disabilities. But without that experience of doing it, and without knowing what happens when I walk away from it for a period of time and then come back to it, like it's intense. Like I don't want to perpetrate like I'm some guru or anything like that. I don't, um, but yes, I've been doing it since I was a child.
So you have authority in that area. You can speak to that well, and you should write your book. Something that, I'm very familiar with prayer. I've been doing prayer since I was a kid. I used to get up at 5 a.m. and pray with my mom before school. So I'm very familiar with prayer, and dipping my toe in meditation. Here's something that is worth taking a chapter on or a paragraph.
Yeah, sure, whatever. Yeah.
Breakthrough generally takes 10 minutes for me.
Okay.
So if I sit down to meditate in my own expectation, I know you're not supposed to have expectation. You're simply supposed to observe. But if behind that, I can say, I'm going to sit here for 10 minutes. By the time I hit the end of 10 minutes, I'm silent. That's about for me. And I'm sure it changes for different people.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, if I can get to 10 minutes, I've made it past the noise.
Nice.
So when I'm experiencing the noise, I go, okay, this is really noisy right now. I know if I can just make 10 minutes, I'm good. And then usually at that 10-minute mark-ish is when the silence happens.
That's cool. That's great that you've trained yourself to achieve that. For this is just my opinion from my experience. I would say that you literally have trained yourself to experience that at 10 minutes. So you give yourself 10 minutes to work things out, to let your mind cycle through things, and it's your power down. It's like when you turn off a computer and it has a certain amount of whatever that it has to do before it actually turns off, or the power up. So you've trained, and this, again, just my opinion, you've trained yourself to have a 10-minute power down. And then once you're powered down, then you get to that silent place where you're somewhat floating, or, in that kind of a mental abyss. Do you get full detachment from your body?
The experience, the limited experience I've had where I become really aware of God's presence, I wouldn't say has been detachment, like full detachment from my body. Now, I've had some experiences of the divine that were not based in meditation, where I could, in one of these experiences, I was somewhere else and I was with him and he was speaking to me, and it was terrifying. But that wasn't something that I willed myself into. It happened.
Yeah.
And in terms of meditation, I can't really answer that question. I don't think that I've been fully detached from my body.
That's okay. I mean, I don't think it means anything unless you give it meaning. I only ask just because anyone, listening might be curious, and it's something also just to kind of point out as something that can happen. I do think that some people have innate abilities, and they're not aware of it all the time. I had a friend of mine years back. I was going out to Vegas fairly regularly. A buddy of mine just moved out there, and so we were going out to hang out with him, and party and drink and everything else. And his roommate, he had a roommate that, I mean, this guy partied, you name it, he was playing with it. And at some point in time, he was like, yeah, I think I'm gonna go to massage school. I'm like, what? I'm like, the poster boy for Vegas partying and all of that entails, that you can, that your imagination can go to, wants to go and be a massage therapist. I'm like, okay, cool, great. And one day I come in, he had been in massage school for, I don't know, a month at that point in time, however long the massage school is. And I was like, how's it going? He's like, good. I was like, all right, so I want to see what you got. Like, and I just kind of turned around. He's like, okay. And he just started working my shoulders. And like, it was like, I can't even explain it. Like it was just, it filled my body with sensation of like energetic sensation, like head to toe. I felt like he had the most magic hands ever. Like this guy had a gift. I've gone and paid for a lot of massages. You go to the spa and you get under the sheet, they put on the music, they, light the incense and everything. And every now and again, I'm like, either this person, if I'm not going to the same person again and again, either this person really truly knows what they're doing, or at least I'm getting some of this worked out and they, have an idea. But rarely to never have I experienced someone that I felt like had the healing hands, had that like that glow. This guy, for whatever reason, and he was still smoking cigarettes, put his beer down to give me the, hey, sorry, my dogs are barking. Bean, come here. Bean. always when you want it. Come here. Oh, Nico. I have 2 dogs. One feels bad that she's barking, and he's coming over, and Bean, Madam Lydia Bean. Hey, it's okay. Good girl. She thinks she's a guard dog. Yet if anyone was to like actually step forward, she'd be like, oh, I don't know. She's only a little over a year old, so that's part of it as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he puts his beer down, and I think he might have even still had a cigarette in his mouth. I don't think so, but I kind of, in my mind, he had a cigarette in his mouth. I don't think he actually did. And he starts rubbing my shoulders, and it was like, the energy shot through me. I felt like, oh my God, this is the most amazing massage ever. I didn't want it to stop, but I was like, I'm just going to stand here. And there was almost a level of like, kind of like an out of body experience. That kind of like, there was a little bit of a separation feeling. So anyways, the point of that is I feel like some people have talents for things that you'd never expect. They have no idea. I was so sad when I found out he stopped going down that path. I think he got a job. He got in an argument with the manager or something like that because of dress code or showing up on time or smelling, like cigarettes or whatever it was. He got in an argument, basically told them to go screw themselves. And that was the end of his massage career. And I was gutted for him for a period of time. This is years ago. And I was like, oh my God, like people are like this is such a tragedy.
Right.
But anyways, yeah, the power to train ourselves. I mean, it's like sales. It's like going door to door, like you did, to businesses or anything else. I feel like anything and everything can be trained and achieved. It's like I said earlier, Tim Ferriss, you just have to be able to measure it to some degree. And then you can, modify it to some degree to get where, where you need to be or where you want to be.
Yep. Yep.
Do you have, go ahead.
Well, as far as sales go, and I think it gets past sales, management, certainly. I think one of the most powerful tools that we've been given is not the power to convince. If you think about it, the power to convince is really, on some level, it's manipulation. And I don't like manipulation. I used to be extremely manipulative.
Oh, interesting.
That's for a different show.
Fair enough.
So some of the disasters I've learned about myself. The power to control other people. I don't like it. But one of the most powerful tools we've been given in sales and in business, and I think actually in life, is the power to listen.
Mm.
And so when I'm dealing with a customer, my responsibility with that customer is not to sell them on my product, but is to listen to what they're trying to do and then develop my solution to meet those needs.
Yes.
And it's really interesting when you employ listening. Not only do you come up with better solutions, but in the process, there's a relationship that gets developed between you and your customer where suddenly they don't really feel like a customer anymore. When people feel listened to, they open up.
Yep.
So one of my customers, I've done several projects with them. Last year, maybe it was 2 years ago, lost his mother. And then shortly following, lost his dad. And
in less than a year,
it was like a 1 year. It was like 12 months apart. And I went to his office to walk around a building and develop a scope of work for energy savings, which is what I do. And he just looked a little down. I said, "What's going on?" And he told me what happened. And I said, "Geez, when we get done here, would it be okay if I pray for you?" And like, nobody does this. Nobody does this. But I'm authentically me. This is who I am. This is what you get with me.
No, that's wonderful.
At the end of the thing, he's like, "Yeah, that would be great." And so I just put my hand on him and I just prayed for God to help him. And he starts crying. He felt listened to.
Yeah.
And we need to do that more. Just, it wasn't about selling the job. It was about caring for another person that's in a lot of pain.
So I'm going to ask you, I hope this isn't a tough question. I think this is going to be an easy question. But if someone who you knew was of a different faith, whether it's Muslim, Hindu, Buddhist, or whatever, saw you in a moment, or maybe not even in a moment like that, but maybe just, through conversation, just like, can I pray for you in their own faith? Would that offend you, or would that have any?
Why would I be offended if somebody's trying to help me?
That's why I thought it would be an easy question, but I was like, I mean, religion and other religions mixing or not mixing, is one of those things that, our culture, American culture, is very touchy about. And especially,
Listen, if I'm threatened, it means I'm insecure.
And I think that's pretty much the case with all humans or animals.
So why should I be threatened by that? If somebody's trying to help me, doesn't mean that I necessarily subscribe to or agree with their faith, but that doesn't threaten me. It is what it is.
It can hurt. I mean, if they're praying to their God and it might help, then why not? Why not allow it? I mean, and I feel like every religion, every practice is based in kind of a love, or love, or cosmic beauty, or whatever. So I feel like if they're not the same, then they're very similar. And it's just a matter of practices and words, vocabulary.
So I disagree.
That's fair.
But I love people. And people are free to be and do what they want to be and do. And that doesn't threaten me. Now, if you show up with a gun at my door and you're threatening my wife, well, then that's a different story. But if you're coming to offer, now, like, for example, if Jehovah's Witness comes to my house, they come to my house every so often, or the Mormons are around as well. I think Latter-day Saints or whatever, LDS. I don't let them in my house and talk to me because I'm just too busy.
Yeah.
I don't want to debate on
Yeah.
theology. I'm just, it doesn't, never solves anything. Nobody ever convinces me of something, and I never convince anybody else if I'm debating like that. Now, if I show up with love and I show up with my gift of listening, boy, I impact a lot of people.
Mhm.
My friend Sam will tell you, that guy Gabe, he's a little different. Even though theologically we don't necessarily agree, like
Yeah.
that's okay.
I think that's awesome. I mean, that's I guess the starting point perhaps is a good way to talk about it. It's like, what's the starting point of this conversation? What's the starting point of this interaction? And if the starting point is a place of openness, love, or business, or whatever, if the starting place is here, then you can maybe get to a deeper level. But if the starting place is like all high stakes, like a gun in hand kind of thing, it's like, where do you think you're going to get from there?
Correct.
And
And I would argue that if you're starting your conversation with someone regarding religion and faith, if you're starting wanting to convince somebody, you're in the wrong place.
Yeah.
People aren't interested in what you have to say. People are interested in being listened to.
Yeah.
So if I can listen, and then there's an opportunity to affect somebody with my faith because there's some type of difficulty and I can help them feel better, well, then I think, okay, I've done, what did Jesus come to do? He came to serve. He came to help. And he loved people. And that's what I'm trying to emulate for myself. And I think I've done a fair job at that.
No, that's awesome. And it seems like you've come to a place in your life where you really are striving to achieve, that level of service, which I think is admirable. I mean, I think that's what life should be about. I had there's a social media app called Clubhouse, and I spent a fair amount of time on it last year, and running different rooms and talking to people about different things. And I had this guy who is I think he's a business coach, if I remember correctly. That's probably about 6-7 months ago now. And he wanted to just talk to anyone about like the point of life or the value of life. And can you change people's minds? And so we had about an hour-long conversation. I think there was a couple other people that joined the room, but no one really, really got into the conversation. And it turns out he had drug addiction issues earlier in his life, and kind of was pulled out of society, and put in jail for a period of time, and had to get sober, and then find work and figure out how to be gainfully employed, and then figured it out, and then got to a place where he wanted to then be a business coach. And it was interesting because in the course of the conversation, it became clear that he didn't think that his job was to be of service to people. He knew that was his job, but like that was his job. He didn't realize or didn't think about, being a human. As a human, your job is to be of service, because you serve no value to the community otherwise. And so through the course of conversation, he kind of, said, wow, okay, I guess, yeah, you changed my mind, because I see it now, because the reason why I was, taken to jail and pulled out of society is because I didn't serve a purpose and didn't have any value to anyone. And the only reason why they let me back in is because I started having value. And now the only reason why I get paid is because I have a value to these people, because I'm helping them. And he kind of spiraled and kind of spit it all back. I'm like, yeah. So the only purpose for anyone on this planet is to have value to the community that you surround yourself with. And if you're not a value to the community, What good are you to anyone, including yourself?
It's very Eastern.
It is.
In the Eastern mindset, it's very, very much focused on community, whereas Western mindset is very, very focused on self.
It is.
Now, politically, I'm conservative. I can't get away from my conservative values. Now, that doesn't mean that I define to you what you believe or what you say. It's just, for me, it's like a live and let live kind of a mindset.
Mm-hmm.
I value my own individuality, and I get a tremendous amount of fulfillment in helping people.
Mm-hmm.
So I've started a business group. I started in January. And the whole purpose of this business group is for me to mentor people. I'm not charging any money. You come, ask me any questions you might have, and let's help guide.
It's amazing that you're in that position to do that.
Yeah, well, it's not really taken off, but we'll see. The desire's there, right?
So one of the things that I have found is the barrier of entry. So if there's no barrier of entry, but you're creating a space, people tend not to come in. And if they come in, they don't stay because they don't know, what the value is because there's no barrier of entry.
What is a barrier of entry?
So the easiest example that I feel like is kind of overused or not is the velvet rope outside of a nightclub.
Okay.
So you've got a bouncer in there, and you've got a guy with a clipboard. Maybe it's the same person, or maybe it's a group of people with clipboards, and they're standing outside that velvet or inside the velvet rope, and there's a line a mile long, choosing who comes in or who doesn't go out. So the barrier of entry is a literal rope, velvet rope, and a person or people with clipboards and maybe muscles. And then to expand the line down the block, where are you getting in that line? Are you getting at the front of the line? Are you getting at the end of the line? Do you go on this side of the rope or that side of the rope? So the barrier of entry would be defined by how much is in front of you, or what do you have to overcome? Is it time? Is it money? Is it a combination of things? Is it being vulnerable? That would be the barrier of entry. Do you have any kind of barrier entry for this new venture?
No. Nope.
So what's the barrier of entry? If you don't mind going down this road with me for a little bit, what's in with your business, what's the barrier of entry for someone to work with you? Like if you some new business wants to be more energy efficient, what do they have to do to get you to work for them?
They have to give me some time.
And what does that mean?
It means I'm going to come in and talk to them,
mm-hmm.
and we're going to have a discovery conversation. And I may, at the end of our first call, I might say there's really nothing to be done here.
Fair.
Or maybe I'll spend a couple days at their site, poking around, finding different opportunities. Generally, I don't charge for that. All I charge is, okay, whatever your time is valuable, but I expect that you're going to meet with me again.
So you're charging time, but you're also charging access because you need access to their facility potentially. And then you're also charging a vulnerability to a certain extent because they have to give you information. So you're charging information and knowledge. And so those are at least three things right there: access, information, and time. And then there's an expectation of what they're going to potentially get for that, right? Mm-hmm. And that's all no monetary value.
Correct.
Once that's done, are there any other challenges or any other obstacles or requirements that they need to fulfill in that time? Do they need to fill out any questionnaires or?
That
Anything else you
normally,
like?
normally that's kind of part of the discovery process, and that might be a one-page document that they complete, or that might be a consultation that we have together, and I've got my trusty notebook out and I'm taking notes.
Okay. And then the expectation that you're giving them for of what may happen from this meeting, what is that?
So generally, I'm in the energy efficiency business. I'm going to come back with some costing of what it would cost them to make an investment in their infrastructure. And then there's going to be a second line item that is what they can anticipate saving on an annual basis for making that investment.
And then you'll probably include in that prospectus some level of obstacle removal, because you're going to make it easy for them to do this.
Correct.
So in the beginning, you're setting up a certain expectation. You're asking for a handful of things. And then once you come back to them, you're setting up more expectations of what you can do for them. And then you're going to make it easy for them. You're going to take away some of the obstacles or some of the barrier of entry. So how now, based on that model of how you get new clients, how are you doing with your new business of coaching people? Where's the
Yeah,
translation?
I don't know. I'm gonna have to. I'm writing this down. So you're saying that I need to create a barrier of entry to get people interested.
And then you also need to create expectation.
Mm-hmm.
And then, when it's time, then you need to make it easy for them to make this transformation. Because what you're offering, I mean, essentially what you're doing is you're looking to become a business coach, a life coach. You can coin it any way you want, but that's essentially what you're doing. So that industry is fairly well established, but I would argue that it's not really changed at all from any other consulting business or any other, service-based, like being a lawyer or being an accountant. There's no difference. You still have certain things you're going to offer. The difference is you're offering a certain level of transformation, self transformation, to help them in their business or to help them in their personal life. It's essentially, what I do. And there's a million different ways to do it. Some people do it with online classes, some do it one-on-one, some do it through a podcast, some do it through books, some do it through just speaking engagements. So there's no right or wrong way to go about doing it. Everyone charges a different amount. Some don't charge for certain things, but then offer maybe products or books or whatever. So you have to figure out, and again, my opinion, you have to figure out what container you're creating to say, look at this, because not everyone's going to want to listen to a podcast. Not everyone's going to want to be a part of the community that I'm trying to create through the podcast and YouTube show. Not everyone's going to want to read books but by having different elements, I like talking to people, and I like this. This is probably my favorite thing to do. I like working with people as well, but I don't want to work with just anybody one-on-one, because how invested are they? And I could say, well, it costs $1,000 an hour to talk to me, but then I'm going to miss out on certain people that don't have the money that I really, really want to work with, because there's something that they have to offer. So I want to make it as easy as possible for people to reach me and get something from me. And maybe it's not right to do one-on-one. Maybe it's just listen to the show, and they're going to just pick stuff up in every episode as I talk to people. Maybe when I put out my first book, maybe that will be for them, or maybe not. But I know that I love this, and I've always wanted to have my own show as an actor. So I get my own show. And so that was the most important thing for me, is to create, as I was creating my container, and as I was creating my corral, I'm trying to figure out what fences I wanted or didn't want, what kind of fancy gates I needed or didn't need. I had to figure out what was the most important element. And like you, I want to give it all away for free. But I also realize I can't pay my bills, because if this is all I do, then, I'm not going to be able to feed myself and take care of my family and, go see my extended family and, or my sister back east or whatever. So, and it's okay to take money. If you retire from Invinus, is that how you say it? Inovis, apologize. If you retire from Inovis to be full time, then maybe you have enough money to sustain yourself and live the way you want to live. But is that the correct barrier of entry? Then no money, for people to say, okay, I want to do this.
Yeah, I mean,
it's all track.
I am absolutely on track. I'm not ready to monetize anything, because right now I'm in sort of the benevolent phase that I just,
for sure,
I want to help people with what I've been given and what I've experienced. Now, if I were to transition, as you say, out of what I'm doing right now, which I have no plans to do in the short term or medium term, then one thing that's pretty interesting that I've found in business is, if you charge people something, then it has value to them.
The more you charge, the more value it has to them.
And if you don't, very often they don't value what you're saying.
100%. Caveat: what you charge does not have to be monetary in nature.
Yep.
So and perhaps for different people, I mean, if you want to get really nuanced about it, different people would have a different currency. Some people's currency is their time. Some it's money. Some it's their emotional, connection, and they're going to become emotionally invested in you, and that's going to be more valuable to them because they're just closed off and they're not capable of being emotionally open and vulnerable and attached to people. So, there's a million different ways it can manifest. There's probably only a handful of ways it actually works, but a million different ways that, like, for instance, money, the way money works for some people, that's where sometimes sliding scales come in, where it's like $100 to one person is like, $1,000 to someone else, or $1 to someone else. But how they spend their money and how they view the spending of that money is going to shift. And for instance, the investment in, if someone paid you $1,000 for a transformation, then it's your job to transform them. Where if they give you $1,000, so that they can transform themselves, then it's on them to transform themselves. So, and there's no trade secrets in this. This is just, how people see. It's like my mom saying, I'll help you clean up your toys if you want. Certain minds need certain encouragement.
Sure.
And, one of the things you might consider doing to pull people in is, aside from creating something that they want to go and check out, which is usually the expectations. Like, ooh, look at that shiny, beautiful thing over there. Like, what is that? Oh, that's what I could be. I could be like that. It's the mirror. And then the barrier of entry, it's like, well, how much does this cost? let's talk about it. And, that could be the first point of entry to find out where they're at, who they are, and what they value, to find out what the barrier of entry for them is to work with you. And, I've not found free consultations to be, saying free consultations to be that helpful.
Right. We don't use the word free. Free is a bad word, man.
It's a weird word that people have connotations to. Same thing with cheaper. Oh, this is cheaper than that. It's like, well, this is just less expensive. Less expensive and cheap are not the same thing.
Correct.
Mathematically, they might be the same thing, but not as a human. Yeah, I don't know. The business is business. Doesn't matter what you do, how you do it. And my perspective is we are born businesses. As a human, you are a business because you have goods and services to trade, sell, offer, whatever, from birth, as a child. And, tribalism is not human nature. Like, despite all the books, like maybe one day I'll write a book about that because I think about it all the damn time. Tribalism is a survival mechanism. We are survivalists. All we want to do is survive. And we learn from a very early age that we cannot survive alone because we have such a long gestation period. We have the longest of any mammal. It takes us years to be able to take care of ourselves. So we learn at a very early age, it's baked into our DNA that to survive, we need help. And then tribalism is just a survival mechanism. And it's one of scarcity because I don't have enough. You've got more. Help me. And then it's founded on scarcity. And then the tribe is founded on scarcity. Therefore, the tribe has a scarcity mentality. So tribalism, not only is it not human nature, but it's not good for humans either to tribe up. And we've seen it with politics recently. And the media encourages it because, two sides, the other, and it becomes this funky dance. I'm just rambling. I know you agree with me, but
oh no, absolutely. And I mean, the biggest question is, I emailed a friend of mine who is running for office in Oklahoma, and I said to him, listen, I am so disenfranchised with our political parties. I said, I don't trust one and I don't trust the other. And, the problem is that I don't know what to do about it. And he responded really in a very interesting way. In fact, since we're in the discussion, I think I'll read this to you.
Yeah, please.
Let's see here. Here we go. He said, after, maybe I'm not supposed to, it just went off. What the?
Well, I mean, we can, yeah, maybe, maybe you need permission first. I mean, you weren't going to say his name, but you did say.
No, I was going to say his name. So. I mean, basically he said, Gabe, I'm completely on board with you. He said, I'm running for office because it's our responsibility as the people to run the government, not have the government run us.
This is what I try to tell people. I grew up in DC. So DC is, it's my water. You know what I mean? Like it or not, and I don't like it most of the time, but it's my water. The government is not broken. Our culture is broken. And because money may not trickle down, culture does. And we take this tribal mentality, which is, what we started as, and of scarcity, and we've got to band together, and we take a person from our community and send them off. They now become, because our system has grown so massive and so big, they've now become a member of a new tribe of scarcity and power and money and everything else that goes along with being in politics. They're now over there. So their new tribe.
How do we fix it? How do we fix it? I agree with what you're saying. How do we fix it?
So my perspective is, I think your friend's right. This is all about the people. And it's about getting people to understand that the government, the system as it is, still works, and we can turn it to our favor, but we have to eliminate this tribal idea of us against them. This is not a sport. We have to get some of, if not all of the money out of politics, because it's ruining both sides. Both sides do insider trading always. Martha Stewart goes to jail, and all of the people on Capitol Hill get rich. How's that okay?
Right. Your friend Nancy Pelosi over there. Oh yeah, I'll agree to no trades now.
All of them. I mean, all of them. I mean, there's some worse than others.
Yep.
But all of them are in it together. I used to say the Republicans lie about caring about your financial well-being, and the Democrats lie about caring about your social well-being. That was my line from back in the 90s when I was in college. That's the way I saw things. And I guess the most simple way to put it, it all starts with the starting position, how the conversation starts. So I talk about this in an earlier episode with a friend of mine. I was at a charity event. A friend of mine, for her birthday, she does charity events. Instead of gifts, she's like, buy a ticket here and have an experience, and the money goes to whatever, charity she's working with, nonprofit she's working with. It's really cool. And Soul Cycle is one of her addictions, really. Soul Cycle is a spin class. So you're on stationary bikes, you're in a dark room, and the person leading the exercise is essentially taking you through a guided meditation. I had no idea what I was walking into. And exercise has always been one of my favorite ways to meditate, moving meditation. And so, man, did I fall into a groove, and I went there. Like I left the building, actually on multiple occasions during that cycle. And I had two primary visions. And one of them, I actually have a friend of mine that created a kind of a logo that I'm going to turn into a sticker. And it's just one earth, same air, same water. And my take is, I want to, through this vehicle and through anyone else that's willing to jump on this ride, it's not groundbreaking. It's not like, you don't know we're on this rock together spinning through space.
Right.
But I think it's taken for granted because it's so far away. China is drinking our water and we're breathing their air, and vice versa. But it's so far away, we don't think about it because we're conditioned to our small little sphere, our little plot of land. And if the conversation starts, one earth, same air, same water, I think everything changes at that point in time. Pollution, will have to change, because you're not polluting my water, you're polluting your water. So your daughter, your grandkids one day are going to be drinking the water and the air that you're polluting or not polluting. So I think that, globalization, to me, is kind of a foregone conclusion. We can maintain our independence as individuals. We can maintain our independence as states or as countries, but globalization already happened years ago, and it's inevitable. There's no way around it. The question is are we going to be complicit in allowing it to devolve, continue to devolve as it has been, or do we want to take action to, make the most of it, the best of it? Because for me, I'm not a Christian. I'm not, the Bible is not my book, but the stories are amazing, and I take value from many of them, or at least the ones that I know. The Adam and Eve story, for instance, is not a story of our rejection from the Garden of Eden. It's our test to get back in. And call it the kingdom after or here on earth. We have to do what we have to do here to prove our worth. And that means working together, loving each other, and tending our garden, aka Earth, our spaceship. So sure. However you want to look at it, whatever words you want to use, that's my perspective. And it all starts from, are you coming at me with a gun, or are you coming at me with open arms to give me a hug? And one Earth, same air, same water, to me, is my best example or way I can say, love you, hate you, I accept you for who you are. We're poisoning each other. How can we stop? How can we do better? How can we, save energy, conserve energy? That's my perspective. Sorry, I'm ranting again.
No, good stuff, man. Good stuff. Mr. Silver.
Perhaps this is a good stopping place. I think we've been going for just over 90 minutes. And then we can come back at perhaps a later date.
Yeah, whatever you want to do.
I'd be curious. I mean, I could keep going. I'm starting to feel like, this is getting to be a long episode, and I feel like we're scratching the surface of where we might end up going.
Exactly.
So we'll wrap it for this episode. And I think maybe, you said 6 months, you're a guy that you're looking at hiring, you'll know more. So maybe that would be a good benchmark to come back into a round 2.
Yeah, we'll do round 2 in 6 months.
We can find out what happened to him. And we can find out where your coaching side project is.
And
speaking. Yes, because if this is number 1, then in 6 months, you'll have had to have a couple more by then.
Yes, this is true. That sounds great. It's been fantastic, Michael, speaking with you. Very intriguing and interesting conversation.
Yeah, thank you.
Kind of went everywhere.
It did. And I would say more often than not, my conversations do go everywhere. But I try to keep the thread, and I try to keep track of what's happening, for people listening. But I also feel, as someone that has ADD, and I never was able to admit that, prior to last year, I think on some level, everyone's mind has a little bit easier time locking in when things are more is happening, because you got to stay more focused. You got to stay more present. So if you're juggling 5 balls, you've got to be much more focused than if you're just juggling 2.
100%.
So, all right, I'm going to stop recording and hold with me for just 1 second. Don't forget to comment or leave a review. I'd love to hear your thoughts. New episodes every Tuesday. And for shorter clips from each episode, find us on YouTube. Thanks for listening. And don't forget, your life story is yours to write and rewrite as many times as you want.